How's everybody doing out there? My name is Stefan from the Urban Collective Show.
What's up, everybody? It is your First Lady, Ms. Bernadine Truth, First Lady of the Urban Collective. Super excited to be here.
The only lady and First Lady, I guess.
Only lady, First Lady.
Well, I can't really say that because we have behind the scene, the director is a woman.
I mean, you're the one that just said it. I'm trying to agree with you.
Oh, I see. I got you. But, so a little bit about us. Bernadine and I, we are part of the Urban Collective Show, which is a podcast that is held throughout the city. We cover different events, but our main reason for having the podcast is to support entrepreneurs around the city, especially millennial entrepreneurs. What we realized is in Boston, we have a lot of young people that are doing their business and that are starting businesses, but they have no voices. They have no way of getting interviewed or knowing who they are or telling people about them and who they are. So we started this podcast to interview them. We've had a lot of different guests. We've been on for about 2 years now. We are at our we just dropped our 71st episode the other day, which was a great interview actually. We interviewed two people. One of them was transitioning, transitioned already, and the other one was an activist in the gay community. So it was a pretty nice episode to have. We've had a lot of different people, from politicians, different entrepreneurs, musicians on the show. What about you? How do you feel where other sectors that we cover?
Yeah, so I mean, to really echo on NIC sentiments as far as who we've had on our segments, it's really an opportunity where I like to consider it a great chance for us to discuss Boston's unsung heroes. A lot of individuals who have made great strides in the city of Boston but don't always have the opportunity to be recognized and celebrated. And so, again, like you said, to celebrate and recognize that we've been in business for 2 years, it's been amazing to have a number of entrepreneurs on our show who have actually attended BECMA this particular weekend. We had Jessica, who does a lot of work with Queens Co. The women of Queens Co. were here. Joelle from Montreal was here.
Yes.
We had, Feta was in this room, was here at BECMA. So again, it's just really thinking about a lot of influential individuals who are doing great things in the city of Boston. Stephanie Voltaire was also on our show. Yes. And Jessica and Stephanie are two individuals who actually helped to put this event together. And so thinking about the impact and the imprint that Boston millennials have made in the city of Boston, it's a pleasure and a true honor to be in a position to interview them and to really share their story, and give them a platform to share their stories and how they became to be the individuals that they are. So the Urban Collective is really out here doing it for the city, doing it for the culture, because we matter, right? And we are in a position where we are the ones who are owning our own narratives and not allowing other people to dictate or control what our stories are about, and how they are in fact shared. They are shared from a primary source, which is their voices and their experiences 101. So it's a good time.
So one of the things we wanted to get into is real briefly talk about two of the top guests that we've had, at least from my perspective and from Bernadine's perspective. I know we've interviewed so many different people from all different walks of life. It's very big to have someone come into the show and tell you who they are, what they're doing, and what they're about. One of my personal favorites was Jessica. She's a young woman. She's, I believe, in her mid-20s. And she was diagnosed with cancer. Imagine being 22, 23-year-old, and you're just living out your life, and you just found out you have cancer. What do you do? How do you go about living life? Your support system, families, friends. She was in school. How did she handle that? And she was able to go through the whole episode, had to go take medication and everything. And even with taking the medication, she still kept going to school. She finished her degree, and she started working. And the support system that she had around her friends, her family, she's like, that's what really helped her get through this moment, because it was a very hard time in her life. And she didn't see, I would say, the light at the end of the tunnel, but her family helped her see that. So that was amazing to see. And also, we had another gentleman that we interviewed recently. His name is Alexander Pade. If you don't know Alexander Pade, he is a producer, he's a DJ, everything in the music field he holds. But what he was able to do was come in Boston and have at least 17 different musicians throughout the city. 17 different musicians throughout Boston to bring them on and have them do a collaborative album together. I don't know if you understand how hard that is, just having 2 to 3 people come together and make one song. 17 different people. He produced every single song on the album, executive produced it, marketed it, everything. So you have a lot of different people, Red Shades, Nancia, a lot of different people, Hefe Replay. If you are in the artist and you know the music that's happening around Boston, all of them was part of this mixtape that they dropped. They did a video for it, and it was well executed. Love that. Love seeing that and other people helping each other out.
I would say to be honest, I love all of the guests we've had on our show. I think everyone does amazing work in the city of Boston. If I were to highlight a particular segment, I would say one would be a moment where we had women entrepreneurs on our show talking about their work and what it's like for them to balance motherhood and being an entrepreneur and also working full time. And I think that that's a perspective we don't highlight often or highlight enough, right? So it's one thing to say I want to work for myself and I want to fulfill my dreams, and it's something else to be able to do that and also maintain a family and have children and still, again, find an element of yourself to still be the independent individual that you are, but also understand that your identity is well encompassed in the well-being of your children. And I think, you know, there are many moments where parents feel like they have to sacrifice who they are and what they're looking to do for the sake of their children, or so many elements of their identity is wrapped around parenting, period. And so to see these three women, we had Joanna Edwards, we had Wanda Medina, and we had Anna Maven on our show, Anna Foster on our show, talking about their experiences and what it was like for them growing up and what family support looked like for them when they were young women to then grow into their womanhood and then to feel like I'm working full time, I am a mother, but I'm also this individual woman who has her own aspirations and her own dreams, and what does that look like? And what does work-life balance look like? And what does work-life balance, faith, family look like? Right, and so I think for me that particular segment stands out a lot because it's a number of things that people have to juggle regularly. Another episode that I would like, it's tough for me because some of the people who've been on the show are my friends, and I love all of them, and then there are a lot of people that I become my friends in the world. Stop it, I hate when you do that.
You gotta choose one. So if you know Bernadine and you listen to the show and she always does this, she's always like in the middle about everything. You have to choose one.
Because life is amazing. Okay.
Oh yeah, okay.
Monday's great.
I still need you to choose one.
Whatever. Anyway, so another episode, I would say would be our pilot episode. And I think I highlight our pilot because we were figuring it all out. And we had an opportunity for our pilot episode to have family and friends come out into the studio that we were recording in and give us feedback. And that was really important to me because I think as you're developing and as you're creating a platform, you have a vision as a host and as an artist, but you don't know what you intend on putting out there may not always be what's perceived or reflected or received. And so it was amazing to have critical thinkers in that space really evaluating what we do, talk about our progress and where we can kind of improve, but also celebrate our accomplishments and our successes. So I would say episode number 1, and you know, I gotta support my women out there who are balancing many, many worlds. So there's that. Anyway.
Yeah.
I picked, okay?
I'm glad you did.
Well, anyway, no, but I mean, yeah, so like just thinking about that balance, I think is really, really important for sure, though.
Yeah.
So.
But that's the gist of our show. So as you can see, we had a musician, women working in their fields and their careers. First episode where we're just starting out. So we've kind of covered almost every single walk of life, from government, private sector, musicians.
Financial literacy, home ownership, the political arena, not just for politicians, but then also for individuals who are doing a lot of that work and are really providing platforms for people to educate themselves. We've had bakers on our show, a vegan Haitian pastry maker on our show. We've had people who are focused on fitness and well-being. We had a masseuse on our show giving us massages while we were recording. I mean, again, it's really a great opportunity for us to get to know a lot of people who are doing phenomenal work. We've had fellow podcasters on our show. So again, it's a network, it's a space, it's a community. And I really, again, pride ourselves on being able to provide a platform for people of color to share their own stories. We've had educators, right? And really talk about their journey and what it's like to be in business and balance it all. Yeah. But we're here. We're here at, celebrating BECMA.
Yes.
We're also here at MBE. And we're really excited. One of the things that the Urban Collective show always does is we invite a celebrity guest to be on, right? Which is, again, what we're talking about as far as who we bring onto our show. So we are super excited to have a celebrity guest interview with you all right here. So, you're right. And as I say celebrity guest, our guest is like laughing.
Yeah, they always look at us like, I'm not a celebrity.
Right, like, I'm not a celebrity. Except you, like, in this particular venue though, like, you're legitimately a celebrity. Like for real. Like, so, right, keep drinking that water.
Yeah, let's bring him up.
Who we talking about? Y'all want to know who our celebrity guest is? Yes. Can y'all clap it up? Y'all want to know who our celebrity guest is?
Yeah, let's hear it.
Yes, talk about it. All right, so our celebrity guest for this segment of the Urban Collective show is yours truly, Segun Idowu. Sorry, I almost messed up the name. Oh, that's terrible. We're gonna have to have Segun on this show. For those of you who don't know, Segun is the executive director of BECMA, the Black Economic Council of Massachusetts. Already coming up in here as executive director, Segun is an ex-officio member of the board of directors. He was raised in Boston and is a proud product of the Boston public school system. He went to Boston Latin Academy. For those of you who don't know, now you know. Following his graduation, he's earned his Bachelor's of Arts in History from Morehouse College in Atlanta, historically Black college in Georgia, with honors from the Phi Beta Kappa and Golden Key Societies. I mean, you know, men with intelligence and all of that as well. Following his 2012 graduation, Segun decided to learn how government works from the inside and joined the office of then District 4 City Councilor Charles C. Yancey. After 2 successful years as a legislative aide, building relationships, reviewing and offering policy and addressing constituent concerns, he transitioned to the Edward M. Kennedy Institute for the United States Senate. At the Institute, Segun was able to forge new partnerships with community organizations. These partnerships ensured that the Institute invested in sustainable local businesses and extended the opportunity for traditionally underrepresented groups to access its educational programs. This particular element of Segun's bio is one that I really want you all to pay close attention to, because I think it is super significant and impactful in not just Boston, but in our country worldwide. At the same time, Segun also organized the Boston Police Camera Action Team in 2014 with fellow high school graduate Shakia Scott. This mission of the community group was to further accountability and safety in Boston through the mandatory use of police body-worn cameras. Segun and his team built relationships with community organizations and leaders, as well as engaged a vast number of fellow Bostonians in order to explore the issues surrounding the tools. There's so much more to this man's bio, y'all, and I'm not even gonna get to all of it. But what I want to say to you all is Segun is not only a man who talks the talk, but he walks the walk. And we are in this position right now with BECMA, with MBE, to be able to celebrate all of you. But really, I'm super excited and honored to have you on our platform and on our show today.
Welcome, man. How you feeling? The day's here. It's almost over. You know?
It's like 101 time, for real.
Ask you on Monday.
Is it on? Got it. I was like, if anything, I can share this.
Yeah, you can switch up. Hold on, let me give you this one.
Yeah. So how you feeling?
Tired.
Tired?
Yeah. But excited. It's Independence Weekend at the Boston Convention Center. Happy to see all of Massachusetts here in the audience. I'm excited. I'm happy that you all are here joining us. Yeah.
When you say it's Independence Day, tell us a little bit more about what that means to you and how that name came to be for this weekend.
So I will say something about BECMA for folks who may not know anything about us, and then say something about this weekend. So BECMA is the Black Economic Council of Massachusetts, is the Chamber of Commerce for Black-owned businesses in the Commonwealth. And we are... That's right.
What is going on?
That is the devil. That's what that is. The devil's trying to...
What happened?
No, but we're holding this event this weekend called the Mass Black Expo to address the fact that in the state of Massachusetts, billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars are spent every year on business matters of all varieties. And people of color, particularly the Black community, don't get anywhere near what we earn, what we are owed, or what we can do. And the common excuse that is always used is that we can't be found, or that there are no Black businesses in a particular field, or that we don't have capacity. And the whole purpose of our putting this weekend together was to show that all of this is not true. That we are here, that we've been here, and that we're not going anywhere. and the fact that we do have capacity, that we are ready to take on all of the opportunities available to us. So we had almost 100 businesses here, a bunch of workshops. So when I think about Independence Weekend and why we use that theme, 2019 is the 400th anniversary, I would say, from the first African person was brought to the country as an enslaved person. And it's important to note or to make a distinction, right? Black people have always been in this country. We were here before the Mayflower, before they wrote the Declaration of Independence. Black people were here before the Civil War. Black people were here, right, before, all of the milestones of this country that we celebrate, black people were here. But as an enslaved person, that started in 1619. And so what we wanted to highlight, we wanted to first of all recognize that, because for the rest of the country, they want to forget it. They want to wipe over it. They don't want to talk about it. But for us, it was important to acknowledge how we came to be in this country, but also to highlight the resilience, the fact that 400 years later, the slave trade, slavery itself did not wipe us out, that we are stronger than ever. And so we wanted to showcase that this weekend.
No, and I mean, when I walked around, having been here since yesterday, right, even from who you had as your guest speaker, your keynote delivering that address, Donna Brazil, and her ability to talk about that resiliency factor, right, and us being able to persist and recognizing that even though we can be in spaces where we're the only one in that room, the one person of color, the one black woman, the one black man, the one person who might be the first generation individual in the room, the one person who didn't grow up with financial literacy, right, our job is not to run. Our job is to stand up, our job is to stand tall, and our job is to let people know that we are here. So even though, again, this article, one of the articles that were published from the city of Boston highlighted that over, $600 million was given, and less than 1% of that was provided to minority-owned businesses and women, right? Like less than 1% of those millions were given out that way. And then to think about your platform here and how important it is to highlight Boston and the fact that we are there are black business owners here. There's clearly a major gap in the inequity, right? And so when you understand that, and when you hear that, and when you also highlight the fact that this is Independence Day, what do you think we need to do to really address the inequity factor? Because I think right now within this expo, we're exposing, right? We're letting people know we're here, and that's part of it, right? I can't give to somebody I don't know is here. But again, what do we need to do to actively decrease the inequities on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So, and I'm going to add a little, another fact to that. So the report sheet that Bernadine just brought up was in May of this year. So one of the things that BECMA does is we advocate for our members as well, whether it be for policy, for legislation, but on this particular issue, what we did was, so before I joined BECMA in November of last year, BECMA worked with then Councilor Presley, as well as Councilor Michelle Wu, to pass an ordinance that would call on the city to quarterly report on what they're doing, what business they're doing with people of color. And they weren't doing that. And so when I joined BECMA, we worked with the same councilors to say, we need to get this information out there. And so there was a hearing in May where exactly what you just said, out of $664 million that was spent in 2018, the city of Boston spent $4 million of that with non-white owned companies, okay? $4 million. And so that's with minority businesses. It's important also to remember that minority does not mean black. Minority means non-white. So out of that $4 million, less than $1 million of that went to black-owned companies, right? And so for us, so first of all, in order to address inequities, we have to name the inequity, right? So as you've just done. But for the question about what more should we be doing, we're good. Black people, despite all of the injustice and inequity, we continue to produce, we continue to be better, we continue to make quality items and produce quality services. What we're doing is, and why we have this expo this weekend, was to call on the city, to call on the state, to call on private businesses and corporations to do their job. We walk a mile, and we ask them to take a few steps toward us. And so the purpose of this weekend was to make those connections between all of these various stakeholders with black businesses. So we sent out a call to these companies and to the public and private businesses to say, what are you looking for? In 2020, 21, what kind of business are you going to be doing? And based on their responses, we sent out the call and said, all of the Black business owners apply to become a vendor, and based on what we got, we said, okay, we know that the city of Boston, with its 20 different departments, they're looking for XYZ, so we're going to make sure we have these companies at the Expo, so that when their people are walking around, they say, this is what I'm looking for, and we're ready to do business. So again, it's not about what we need to do. Black people continue to do. The problem has always been that non-Black people always find excuses not to work with us, not to do business with us. And so as a chamber, as the chief advocate for Black businesses, we're making sure that if they're not going to walk toward us, we're going to pull them or push them toward what they ought to have been doing for many, many years.
That was just a lot. I'm sitting here like, no.
I talk too much, I apologize.
No, keep talking, because you're talking. One of my infamous statements is always like, talk that talk. And I'm like, yes, you better talk that talk. Talk that talk, because it's true, like, we're here, right? We do this work, we're resilient. Even if we're starting a company with no money in the bank, right? We have an idea, we recognize that there's a gap, we recognize that there's a deficiency, and we want to address it actively. And I know you had a question too.
Yeah, so I know you said it was the money that was handed out has been given to less than 1%. So outside of this conference this weekend, how should other businesses go about talking to the city or talking to people that are in charge to get them to recognize them and basically win more of these jobs and grow that 1%, 10%, 20% where equal partners out there?
So one of the things that BECMA is doing with the city, and thank you for the question, was that we're working on implementing policy, first of all, that has goals. Because right now the city has no goals. We used to, and we had those goals, we were hitting those goals. Then we got rid of that program in 2003, and so now you have 0.5%. So we're trying to establish goals first. Second is, we want to reach as many Black-owned businesses as possible as BECMA. Because the problem in that question is that businesses should not have to individually reach out to the city of Boston to say, here I am, and do business with me. The reason why we exist and why my office is right across from City Hall, so that every time Marty Walsh does something dumb, I get to run over to City Hall and say, excuse me, you know, we need to fix this. But we're also right down from the State House, because, you know, I'm beating up on the city, but the state is, you know, they have goals, but it's at like 6% with minority business, right? Not Black, with minority. And we may be hitting those goals, but 6%, when we make up way more than that in this state, and have way more businesses as well that have the capacity, they need to be doing more. But on the city level, you know, again, as a small business, independent business, you shouldn't even have to. They should already know that you're here. They're not doing their job. So, you know, for us, you know, we want to also get rid of this notion on the part of Black business owners and Black people in general that we have to do more in order to be seen and heard, etc. They know we're here. They're just not doing business with us. They're just not working with us because this is a racist and corrupt system. And so if we name that and if we know that, then we work from that angle. So we're here as an organization to have that list of businesses so that when they are looking for us, we can say, here it is, here it is.
You know, as you're talking and you mentioned, right, like people, like the government, the state, the city should know these businesses exist. Now, on a technical level, is there something that businesses and business owners need to do to ensure that they are in fact on a particular list, right? Because I can say, I'm an entrepreneur because I believe in selling chapstick that looks like, I don't know, like I created this chapstick that I think is phenomenal, and so I can sell it, right, at, I don't know, like to my friends, to family members. They might be able to buy it and give it to their friends, not necessarily. So what are the steps for entrepreneurs to really have their businesses be on some type of platform to eventually be recognized by the city?
So one of the things that we are blessed with, I guess, in Boston is that we have so many resources available. The problem with that is that because there are so many resources, no one knows where to go. And I have to be honest, you know, even with our organization, it's tough to figure out what all of those resources are, even when business members are reaching out asking us that same question. So right now we're working on compiling all of those resources to be able to share, as well as working to compile a singular list that has all of these businesses owned by Black folk to be able to share that. Because right now, in fact, we had one person here today, Marie Furman, who has a list of Black-owned businesses, but there's also the Black Pages, there's also a couple of other lists, and so we're trying to bring all those together. What I would say is this, so, you know, it's also not just about the government. So the city of Boston, the state of Massachusetts, they work with particular types of companies. They may not buy the chapstick, but Citizens Bank might, or WeWork might. And so we're trying to have as much of a comprehensive list as possible so that we're able to share that when folks are looking for whatever.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And I had one more question with regards to the business aspect of things. So I know a number of organizations or companies would recognize a business or invite them to be part of a conference or an event such as this one based off of revenue, right, that a business has actually made. And oftentimes the revenue might be in like the 200 and plus K type of lane. What are your thoughts on that? Like, is that a fair number maybe when we're talking about equity and access, or should there be more programs that exist for people who might really truly be starting out and maybe their business is in that 5K revenue or that 2K revenue because again they're just starting up to try to figure it out? And if you know of any resources that support those types of businesses, what are they?
So, funny you asked that question because we did the same thing. But we did it for a reason. So we split this expo, I have to say too, this is the first time that BECMA is doing this, but it's not the first time that it's happening. So Yves Germain, who was with us earlier today, founded the Minority Business Expo, which occurred in Roxbury for several years, and they had every type of black-owned businesses imaginable that they could fit in Reggie Lewis. But it was only on one day, on that Saturday, and it was a range of different things. So when he moved to North Carolina, and it just didn't happen anymore. So we said, okay, well, clearly it needs to happen because the city and some other people are continuing to push this ridiculous notion that they can't find black businesses, which, by the way, especially in the city of Boston, especially folks who are running certain departments who used to live in Roxbury, to say that you can't find black-owned businesses is a crazy thing to say. I just have to say that.
Right.
Especially in a city that is majority people of color, 54%, okay. What we did, we said, okay, clearly this needs to happen, so we did it. Then we did set standards for either day. So on Friday, we said you have to have 250,000 more in revenue, be around for 2 years, etc. And we do think that this is fair, at least for that day, because again, that day was focused on businesses that have capacity in certain industries. If you've only been around for a year, then you have not established what your business is able to do. You're still going about it. And if we're going to get you a major contract with a company, they're looking for stability and folks that have capacity. So for that day, yes, it made complete sense to set a particular standard to make sure that whoever is here, that they are able to sign a deal with somebody by the end of that day. On a day like today, where we're focused on small businesses, we had particular standards, but it was open to anyone. We wanted to make sure that we were bringing in small businesses of a certain type here, again, to be able to be connected with institutional decision makers and folks that can sign contracts with them. But we also had many startups who were here and folks who, it's a side business, right? They may sell jewelry or clothes, but it's not their full-time job. So, I think in certain cases, it does make sense to have those standards. What I will say to the question about resources that are out there, the answer is yes and no. So for businesses that are doing well, yes, there are a couple of accelerator programs that help to invest in them. And for startups, there are a range of accelerators that exist to invest in them as well. I see some folks who are here representing them. I don't know if they want me to call them out or not, but we have
we'll call out Kofi
we
later.
have E4All, we have a bunch of accelerators that invest and grow companies. Masada Partners was here earlier. And then you have the Foundation for Business Equity at the Boston Foundation and Eastern Bank, but you have to be making $800,000 or more. So what we're working on and working with partners on is to find a way to create some type of program that invests in people in the middle, because there are very few resources for that group. So yeah, we know of the resources, happy to share them beyond even that, but what we're trying to solve is folks who have been around for a couple of years, they're doing okay, but they need that critical $10,000 or even $5,000 to buy, for a restaurant, to buy that that new oven or stove that's going to let them cook for 40 more people as opposed to the 20 that they can cook for now, and help their business explode.
Continue to grow. Absolutely. Thank you so much.
So knowing this was the first year that you guys did this event, do you plan on making it an annual event? And two, the second part to that is, do you foresee it taking it on the road to different states? Because I'm pretty sure we're not the only state that's experiencing what's happening in the small business sector for minorities or black-owned businesses.
It's very true. Yeah, racism is a countrywide thing.
Yes.
Are we going to do this annually? Yes, because unfortunately, racism doesn't sleep. And so we are going to do this every single year until equity is actually achieved. And so actually...
Then there'll be a celebration.
And then there'll be a celebration,
Yes.
and it's going to happen in our lifetime. You know, a lot of times people are very self-defeating and say, oh, well, we're not going to achieve freedom or whatever in our lifetime. Screw that. I want it now, you know, because my thing is, I ain't got no kids right now, but, should I happen to have any at some point, there is no way. In fact, here's what I'll say. My grandfather once told me that I should not confuse motion with progress. And we have a very, we are so good at doing that, though, in the state of Massachusetts, particularly Boston, the most liberal city and state of the country.
You feel like change is happening, we think change is happening.
But it's all about symbolism. Congresswoman Presley was here earlier today, who I love and adore. But Massachusetts or Boston, she became the first black woman to be on the city council, and we said, yay! And it was like, but we've been around for 300 years,
Yes.
so that is kind of sad.
Yeah.
She became the first congresswoman to represent, the black congresswoman to represent Massachusetts in the State House, and we said, oh, yay! It took 230 years for that to happen. Racism is still here, by the way.
Yes.
And she is always quick to acknowledge that, and so we love symbolism. We love tokens, but when it comes to for everybody to be able to take part in the system, then there's a problem. Then we get to talk about barriers and the reason why black businesses aren't succeeding is because access to capital or it's X, Y, Z. I'm gonna tell you the real reason black businesses are not, or why people have their particular views, is because they're racist. I don't know how else. I mean, that's what it is. That's what it is. At the end of the day, I know people get tired of saying, "Oh, everything is racism." That's absolutely what it is, because there are too many examples in the work that I do of seeing how white-owned companies can fail and still get $1 million contract.
Yes.
And how black businesses, if they get a contract, it's way less than that million. And then they are nitpicky on every single thing you do. And if you don't do it exactly as the last person or exactly how I want, then they don't know what they're doing. There's no way I can work with this business. And they don't get that contract again. So racism, that's what it is. And so because we have the capacity. There are too many businesses, either that are members of BECMA or that are just in the atmosphere here in the state, that are doing phenomenal work. But because of this stigma that non-black people have toward black people and the quality of our work, ever since we stopped doing it for free, then all of a sudden we weren't doing it right. Anyway.
Listen, you mentioned two statements though that I wanna circle back
I didn't even answer your
to.
question.
I know, I'm thinking about that part.
Wait.
Are you gonna take it on the road?
I didn't even answer his
Sorry.
question. No, you see, I told you I talk too much.
I've been talking, I'm like, and another thing.
I know. But yeah, so the second part.
We are going to, this is the first, so this is the, first of all, this is the first time this is happening.
Yes.
I think I mentioned that. The first one we've done, not the last one, it is going to be annual, and we are going to take this across the state. Other states do this because their black populations want to address this issue. For some reason, there's something about Boston or Massachusetts black people where it takes us a little while to get on these boats. But we will talk about that on another podcast. But this is going to happen across the state. I mean, Boston is not the center of the universe.
Exactly.
Black people live in Framingham, they live in Worcester, they live in Springfield, so we need to make sure that we are touching every single corner of this state. We cannot be arrogant and call on people to come to Boston for everything. We need to go where they are.
Well, and that's equity, right? And that's about access, right?
Exactly.
So we can't just center ourselves in one particular place and expect everyone to come and say,
my team is like,
we provided a
So the plus here.
But to that point, that's why I also appreciated the fact that you all provided transportation, free transportation for people right from Dudley to bring them out here too, because we're recognizing, listen, you might not be able to get all the way over here, but meet us halfway or meet us more than halfway or less than halfway, right? And then we'll bring you the rest.
But we also wanted to make sure we were supporting Dudley. You know, Dudley, for those who live in Boston, first of all, Dudley in Roxbury is literally the center of the city. And it has been disinvested in for 60 years, and funnily enough, those 60 years is how long black people have been living there. And so Dudley Square itself is impoverished. I mean, there are so many boarded up stores there. Businesses that are there are finding that they can't keep their doors open because of the disinvestment, except now that great thing called apparently gentrification is coming back to Roxbury, where black people can't live there anymore. Now we're talking about how do we invest in this place and make it a family friendly and all that kind of stuff.
Let's build a bowling center in there.
Exactly. So we wanted to make sure that many people heard about this event. We wanted to make sure that because there weren't going to be a lot of transactions here, that the money that people weren't going to be spending here, they could spend in Roxbury. And go there, get breakfast at Dudley Cafe or Soleil, come down here, go back, shop at Black Market, go to Suya Joint. There's a lot of great stuff happening there. We wanted to make sure we were supporting the businesses there.
And I love that, and I fully support it because, again, like Dudley is such a black, central, pivotal, talk about representation of our culture. And one that I think people don't highlight and recognize enough. But you were, in your conversation and in your reflection, there were two things in particular that stood out to me that I want us to kind of go back to. One is tokenism and racism, right? So here you are, a black man in this position as an executive director, talking about black economics in the state of Massachusetts. What was that experience like for you? Growing up to be in this particular role, how do you navigate that every day? And do you feel like you are, in fact, tokenized? And who are you tokenized by, and in what element of life?
Okay.
Do we have to?
Yeah.
Let me sit up. You see that, right? Yeah, let me sit up.
I mean, so I grew up, and actually, let me do this before because I don't want to forget. First of all, I want to thank Stephanie Voltaire and Jessica Pierre, who are members of the MBU team, who helped to make every single thing that you see happening here possible.
Yes.
Especially this podcast happening today. So I just wanted to make sure I did that because I talk so much that I forget what I wanted to say 5 minutes ago.
You got it.
Tokenism and racism. So I grew up in Boston, and it is extremely easy to become a token in this city because if you're good at what you do, then all of the non-black, all the white people, want to use only you, and we accept it. And I think it was James Baldwin or my goodness, I'm going to remember later on. But there was a great thinker in the '60s who said that the goal, Frantz Fanon, in I think it wasn't Black Skin, White Masks, but there's a book he wrote where he argued that the goal of a lot of black people is not to become free, but to become white. And in the city of Boston, that is so present. And so when a lot of these black folk get that recognition, they are right up there and do not ever look back. So it's very easy to become a token, and because that's part of the ethos of the city, that's the thing that happens. Right? So do I get tokenized? I mean, first of all, I'm a black male, so yes, it's very easy to become the token because black women are the most oppressed group. I mean, I'm not going to play oppression Olympics, but black women are the most oppressed people in this country. And so, which is why I'm happy that this entire weekend, all we did was feature black women. The major speakers were black women. Most of the vendors we used were black women. The whole team was black women. And so, in this podcast, I mean, I know you're here, but
it's run by black
it's ran about it's 2/3, it's 2 to 1. So yeah, they all know.
So
So
I would
we're
say.
gonna talk about how black men oppress black women too.
Okay.
We don't have time for that. Let the man answer the question. Let the man answer the question.
Although, I mean, that exists in business too. I'm just saying. So in my life, particularly after college, have absolutely been tokenized and have recognized it and always done my best to make sure that I'm including others. Because of where I did go to college, that gives me access to certain spaces. When I was in high school, I was terrible. I was a terrible student. But there's that. And then being in this role, I am always the only black person in the room. And so everyone always turns to me and says, well, what do the black people think? And I say, well, after our meeting last week,
go in and also bring others up with us when we are in those centers, and how can we hold them accountable, whether it's investing into their business, working with them or not working with them? How do you think we should go about that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I will say this too, W.E.B. Du Bois talked about the talented tenth in the early 1900s. What many people don't talk about is that 50 years later he took it back. Because his belief when he came up with that notion was that a very small amount of black people would get their degrees, do well in business, and then come back to the communities they were in, that they grew up in, and lift everyone up. And what he found is exactly what these questions have been. That black people got their bag, and they said, okay, you can do the same.
Goodbye.
Don't ask me to do something for you. I did hard work and did this, so you got to do that too. And so did not give back to communities. And he said, nope, that's not going to work. It's funny that that's not something that became widespread. So we keep, arrogant black people keep believing that only I can do this. So how does our generation do it? Well, first of all, we're already doing it. I see so many of us who say, and not even say, we act, this is our life, that I'm not going to succeed until everybody is succeeding. And it extends beyond family and friends. People are really looking to say, I need the community to benefit. It's why there are so many nonprofit organizations today versus 50 years ago, because everyone is starting a nonprofit because they want to give back to their community. So I think we're already doing it. I think it's the better question that you asked was, how do we hold each other accountable? Because what I do see happening is that we do have to support black, but we have to support black who knows that they're black. Because a lot of times we are, investing or supporting black-owned companies who will take and reap the profit, and you will never see these people again until they're coming back to make some more profit. And so we need to make sure that we are investing our dollars, as Congresswoman Presley will say, our sweat equity, that we're hyping up black-owned businesses and entities that know that they're black and love being black and give back to black. So I think that's how we hold each other. Our dollar. We talk so often about, and I'm going to stop talking. We talk, next year, black people will have a spending power of $1.4 trillion. And now everyone always focuses on that number. We might have that spending power, but a lot of us are also poor.
Yes.
So that money is being spent on like bills and a whole lot of other stuff. But we do matter, right? You go on Twitter, Facebook, right? We own social media, not monetarily, which is we should talk about that. We should, but we own it. Our culture is, whenever they talk about American culture, they're talking about black people.
Yes.
No one's talking about the Country Music Awards, right? They're talking about everything that black people are doing. That's when it becomes, it's like, oh my God, that's great. So why did I say that? I say that because exactly. So the way we hold each other accountable is through those mechanisms. It's where we're investing everything: money, time, and our influence.
But as you say that, right? So one of the things, and again, given our platform, and we're talking about like entrepreneurship and pouring into our own communities. I think one of the elements I'd like to highlight is the challenge we also experience, though, in supporting our own, even when we recognize they're black, when people aren't coming from much financial gain, right? And you're trying to build, but everybody wants you to do something for free. Everybody wants you to do something because they're like, well, this is great exposure, this is a great opportunity. What about the kids? What about your community? But it's like, but what about my business? Right? Like, how do I actually build my business if I'm doing this for free? Like the free meal is not paying the bill. The free meal is not allowing me to travel to go to the next speaking engagement. The free meal is not allowing somebody to get the copyright that they need in order to make sure that nobody infringes on their original content, right? And their intellectual property. So like, where do we then draw the line in pouring into our communities, right? And giving our time and our resources for pro bono work, but then also calling out our communities and holding each other accountable to also say, you need to pay me for my time because this is in fact a craft and a talent that's well deserved.
That is a beautiful question. It also sounds like an experience.
I think it's an experience for everyone. Don't do that.
She said, what happens right there? And then they don't pay you that much.
I need to know.
Yeah. any lawyers?
No, but actually, I love my community. So I do a lot of that pro bono work.
Yeah, so great question. Okay, so the insidiousness of racism is the fact that it is not only the fact that white people are racist, but also that it causes us to live by their standards. And so it's so pervasive that we wind up with, so that, when I talked about earlier, that example that a white company will have $1 million contract and keep getting it even if they do shitty work, that happens with us too. So, they used to say in the 60s, our ice is just as cold, our women are just as beautiful, which is absolutely true. I wish that a lot of us believe that, though. As much as we talk about loving black, we do sometimes, and I'm saying we generally, so of course, if you don't do this, then I'm not talking about you. But because everyone always, well, I don't do that, so it's not true. I mean, yeah, okay. But a lot of us do wind up applying those same standards to our own people, which is terrible. I don't know how to fix that, except on an individual basis, but I guess how you address it is by leading by example. So I ran for office in 2018 and then took over BECMA after, and I've always applied this principle. Whenever I meet with a black vendor, and they'll say to me, usually my rates are this, but we'll do this for you. And I say, no. I say, I want to pay you I want to pay just as much as white people are paying you, right? Because we have to value each other's work. You cannot go around. So it's like, as for BECMA, I'm not going to go to City Hall or the state or some privately owned corporation and say, you need to be paying this black person this money, and then when I do business with them, be like, all right, but cut off 70%. Like that's ridiculous, right? We have to, if you're going to have moral authority, you have to, lead by example. So I think the way we do it is that, leading by example, and then highlighting the fact that you do that. So, starting next year, we are going to be advertising the fact that, we are paying people what they're worth. The other thing that we're doing is we are, at least as an organization, and I hope other organizations will do this. So as a nonprofit, we have to apply for grants. And so one of the grants that we want to apply for with, well, I won't say what the organization is, but we want to partner with an organization that will help provide support to black-owned businesses. That grant is not to give us money; it's to be able to pay those professionals, those black professionals, what the market rate is, so that they can then provide a free service to black-owned businesses, right? So that they don't then get taken advantage of and their business suffers, and then we're all in this cycle of poverty, and because we're not paying each other, and therefore we don't have enough to grow our business and hire, blah, blah, blah.
And I would say too, like added element to that is on a smaller, like local level for entrepreneurs out there who are doing this work. A piece of advice that I received several months ago was go into your year of progress, and as you're thinking about where you want to go, and outline how many places you'd be able to work with on a pro bono level, right? And say, hey, these are, like, I need to have X, Y, and Z number of paid clients, but then I also have put aside a number of spaces, a particular number of organizations that you'd like to work with, and maybe not necessarily charge them for it, or you're able to give them a particular discount that would work to still allow you to sustain your business. So it is actually through lived experiences that I've learned to truly prioritize that and just navigate the spaces in which you occupy to still be able to sustain yourself.
And don't back down.
Right.
Right. If you have a standard,
right,
that is your standard. That is your
That's
rate.
your metric, that's your
and
number.
So if someone is not willing to pay you what you're worth, no matter who or what they are, then they are not doing business with you. They don't respect your business and they don't value you. So you should not step back simply because of this understanding that, well, if I love my people, then I need to do that. No. If this person loves you and supports black business in the way that they say they do, it's not enough to say we did business. Mm-hmm. It's also about valuing that business and investing what they're worth. Sorry,
because I see NSC about to ask this question or about to cut this, but I'm like, wait, but on that same tangent and statement, what about the ways we walk, the accountability or the level of acceptance or patience we have with other black-owned businesses, right? And so what I mean by that, you talk about operating as though we value whiteness so much. We, as people of color, will also go to spaces that are owned or operated by people of color, and I think sometimes we have a low fuse of patience and understanding, and we'll quickly be able to say, oh, that's black business for you, like we're not professional, that's black business for you, they're terrible customer service, that's black business for you, like I can't stand the fact that they don't look this way, they don't have X, Y, and Z, right? And so where do you draw the line as far as like accountability and understanding growth, but then also accountability because you actually have high expectations, like why actually aren't you doing this, because this in fact is not great business?
Well, I guess the easy way to address that is, you know, if I'm in, we'll take a restaurant, right? So if we're in a restaurant and, you know, the staff act a certain way and that makes me get upset, all I have to do is replace it and say, well, if I were at, you know, the Harvard Club and they did that, you know, would I feel the same way? I mean, and again, I can only talk for myself, but it's just about how you're holding yourself accountable, I guess, in those situations. So again, you know, if you're in, you know, what's a rich white store? I don't go with them, so you know, someone tell me. You know, if I'm in Saks, you know, and you know, is that what it's called? Yeah. You know, I'm at Black Market. I don't know. You know, but I'll use that example. You know, if I'm in Black Market, you know, and I feel in whatever way, I'll ask myself, like, you know, in this situation, if I were at Saks and did the same thing, would I be like, oh my God, this is terrible, I'm never doing business here again? My ass is probably going to be right back there and do that. But then that's how I hold myself accountable, like, you know, I need to stop. Because, again, the insidiousness of racism is that, you know, it's not just a white people thing. You know, it doesn't invade just their minds. The problem is that we wind up, because it's all around us all the time, and we can only be so strong to push back against it, that there are, in some cases, that we wind up doing the same thing. So it's about holding ourselves accountable in those spaces, but that's a personal, but you know, but if we see our friends doing it, we got to hold them accountable too. It'd be like, stop being, I mean, if you live, what's going on?
You're good, don't worry.
Yeah, because I got a job to protect. But you know, but you know, stop being like that, right? So yeah, we have to do that.
So for the businesses that can attend BECMA today, do you guys have online resources where they can look up information on how to better serve themselves and help grow their business?
Yes, thank you for the shameless plug there. So, you know, if folks who want to, well, I'll say two things. So yes, if you visit BECMA, BECMA.org, you can find all of the resources that we have. You know, we're very proud to also have partnerships with a lot of folks that provide resources. BECMA can't do it by itself. But we also don't want to recreate the wheel. So if someone is already providing a particular resource, we're not going to do it. We're going to connect you to the folks that do, because we have limited capacity. And want to also make sure that we're working with people, something I did not see in Boston growing up, because everyone is always trying to get theirs and be the HNIC, which I won't, you know, spell out, you know, for the non-black people that may not know that. You know, so we have a number of important partnerships that provide resources. But what I'll say is this, that you don't have to be a BECMA member for us to work with you, right? So we do have, you know, and that's why I'm asking where this is going, because I don't want my board to see this, because they'd be like, no, memberships, people need to pay. But you know, BECMA is, so far as I'm with them, we're going to advocate for a black business, whether you have a membership card or not. Because I've also seen some organizations in Boston or around the country that only stick up for you if you have a membership card, and I think that's ridiculous. You know, of course we want you to support us and invest in us, but if you're a business that wants to do business, you know, wherever, or you're experiencing pushback or racism, or you know, believe you're experiencing this, we want to be with you. I often use this example. If you've seen the movie Malcolm X, there's a scene when in the early part of it when Malcolm, when the police beat up somebody and they're not giving him proper attention, and Malcolm and all of the nation walk down to the hospital, and the cop is like, "Who do you think you are?" And he's like, "Look out the window," and all the men are like, you know, which is a great scene to watch the face drain of its life, because there are all these black men down there. That's when they're afraid of us. So that's what I want BECMA to be. That when someone walks into a room and they say BECMA is, you know, the representative from BECMA is on their way, and all the life drains from their face, because BECMA showing up means that there are 5 lines of black men standing outside waiting for you to, men and women, right, sorry, it was the example, it wasn't on purpose. but that are here to advocate for you and to make sure that that justice will not be denied.
I love it. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And the last question is, where can the collective follow you, and the website for BECMA and everything?
Great. So we are all over the place. We even have an Instagram now, even though we haven't posted.
You have one. You have
Right,
one. You're
right.
in it. You're in it.
People probably
Follow
people think we're spam,
One picture.
Right. No, so our website again is www.becma.org. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram. But what we really believe in doing is you not just visiting our site and looking at the information, but we want to meet with as many people as possible. We want to understand what your business does, where you are in life, and how we can better support you. Everyone always asks, how can we support BECMA? The only way that you're going to support BECMA is by making sure that we are supporting you, telling us what we can do for you. That's exactly why we exist. We're not here for you to do something for us. We're here to make sure that we're doing something for you. Because when we're doing something for you, we're helping to achieve equity, helping to ensure that we're getting Black businesses invested in, growing the economy of the Black community, and thus ensuring the growth of the economy for all of Massachusetts.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yes. Before we leave, I don't know if anybody in the audience had a question. We can have 2 questions. I don't know if you have time to do 1 or 2 questions from the
Yes,
audience.
I believe I planted a couple of people to ask.
So I don't know if anybody in the audience has a question for Segun. We can come up and ask the questions. If not,
Yeah, we'll wrap
no.
up our session.
Going once, going twice. All right.
Wait a second. You didn't even let us think about it. Wait. Anybody?
Anybody? Nobody. Okay.
We don't have to talk about that
Nope,
either.
you gotta
We can just talk about being Black.
Just come up and you can ask questions.
Like, give him a
No, not him. We're security.
No, go for it. State your name, and if you are an entrepreneur, what your endeavor is, and answer your question.
So my name is Cerise Hardaway. I am a co-owner of Final Touch Boutique in Dudley Square. So come support Black, come to Dudley. My question, we were talking about the insidious nature of racism and us doing things to each other and having patience, but how do you have patience when the plight is already there, like people really want to see your demise? I've heard a lot of our sisters talk about other sisters making it harder just to get ahead. How do you deal with that and create that loving nature to come back and even when the snake bites you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know why you asked me that. No, so here's the thing. I mean, like I said earlier, there are, at least for the next 10 years, going to be crazy barriers facing Black people. I say at least 10 years because we're all going to be working together and we're going to make sure in our lifetime we get rid of this crazy shit. But I guess I can address that in 2 ways. So the first is you just have to keep doing what you're doing. Because one thing I have found in this city, because this happened to me, that it's like with BECMA. When I joined BECMA, BECMA was not known for doing much of anything. I mean, the board was doing a lot of great work, especially in the policy area, but they all have full-time jobs. And so BECMA was not visible. So as soon as I joined, they said, they're not going to do anything, they're not about anything, they're going to fail. But then we had the Mass Black Expo, and now everybody's our friend. Those same people who were talking mess are now calling me up, I think right now, because my phone's been vibrating off the hook. You know who else who can tell a story about that? Congresswoman Presley. When she ran for Congress, every Negro you can find in the city of Boston said, every Negro in politics said, she ain't gonna win. He's good white people, Mike Capuano, what you doing that? And we're plotting against that demise, and we're working on his campaign, right? Now, you can have your policy views and say this is why we need to support him. No one's doubting that. But just off the bat, she can't win. And now she's a congresswoman, and they were all there at the victory party, So, what I'll say to that is that I feel like people are always going to plot against you when they know you're going to be successful. And part of that too is that they could not be successful. So I'm not going to say crap in the barrel mentality. I hate that terminology when it's applied to Black people. But a lot of it is that people are just jealous and bitter. So okay, when they will fade away. But you know, you have to keep working at what you're doing and find other strategies. Because the other part too is that folks feel like you can only do this a certain way, and if someone is standing in your way, then that means you can't succeed. There's always a way. There's always a way around. If you can't get through the door, go through the window. If you can't get through the window, go through the chimney, like Santa does. If you can't get through the chimney, then just get a bazooka and blow the place up. I mean, you find a way. You find a way is my point to get through. So you know, that's again all I can say for that particular example. When someone's plotting against you, they're always going to be there. And the more successful you are, the more people that are going to be plotting against you. But you always find a way around it.
Always. Well, thank you so much, Segun, for your time. Thank you so much for being our celebrity.
We got one more question.
Okay, go for it.
Yeah, you know, we laugh.
We'll replay that. We'll replay that. All right, same thing. State your name if you're an entrepreneur, what your endeavor is, and then your question.
My name is Robert Long. I'm an entrepreneur. My company is Live 24 Hours. We do work with artists and entrepreneurs and help use events to market, raise the awareness on their businesses. I wanted to know, how does BECMA, or are you guys invested in helping returning citizens get access to entrepreneurship? Because I feel like that's the #1 strategy to help people who are returning, being as though it's hard to enter into the areas of business or different, not business, you know, government policies, different arenas. How does BECMA do that?
Yeah, I think that's actually a really great question because a lot of the focus for returning citizens is jobs and not business. So this year, no, BECMA hasn't done anything. But it is part of our strategy for next year in finding partners to be able to do something like that. So I'm in conversation with Steve Tompkins, Sheriff for Suffolk County, about how to address something like that, to make sure that we are getting with folks before they leave prison or jail, to make sure that we're working with them to establish their business. I just saw too, you know, and again, I'm glad you asked that question because I was just thinking about this the other day. I saw a release about John Legend and an organization that his foundation is investing in the businesses of returning citizens. And so again, I don't want to recreate the wheel. If John Legend, with all his money, is doing something like that, then as BECMA, how do we work with this foundation or others that he's talking to bring that same idea here to Massachusetts? Because I think they're focused, you know, in other parts of the country. So great question. All I can say is not yet. But what I would want to do is to make sure that we don't leave without exchanging information so that we can talk about how we work together on that as well. Thank you.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much again, Segun. Thank you for the amazing questions from our audience. My heart is so full. I love it. This is the first time the Urban Collective has done an official live podcast element of our work, and so it's been a great honor to be able to do that. But seriously, as you were all clapping, I really want to highlight you again, Segun, for doing this work, because you are a millennial. You understand the vision, you understand the greater purpose, and really being able to tap into why BECMA is in existence, why you had the MBE, not even make it a dream, but a reality, and where you're looking to have it continue to grow and impact our community, I think is truly phenomenal. What's also phenomenal is that you have a number of millennials who are also part of your team to make this happen. As I reflect on the breakfast yesterday, and the photographers, the videographers, people who are helping with logistics, running the show, contacting us. I was afforded the amazing opportunity to host the breakfast too, and just really thinking about how millennials are truly movers and shakers, and women are movers and shakers, and to have a man recognize the importance of a woman, or having women part of that work and that narrative, I think is truly phenomenal. So continue to do this work. Super proud of you. For those of you who don't know, Segun's doing this work with just under 1 year even as being the executive director. So not even a year in, he's making this happen, he's making this progress. And so we highlight that. Thank you for sharing your story, a little bit about it, and thank you for sharing your initiatives and your work, and we look forward to continually supporting you. And thank you all for being here, part of this live podcast segment. Amazing, amazing audience members. Continue to stay connected with BECMA, continue to engage with each other as well. When we put on our podcast shows, we always encourage people and thank people for following us, but really one of the elements we love to highlight, and the reason we exist, is because we want to support amazing entrepreneurs and people in the communities like yourselves. And so although I wouldn't be able to say this on our show, to you all in this room right now, network with each other, right? So don't just be faces and people who occupy the seat for this particular segment, but if you are leaving here without exchanging numbers with that, if you were to leave here without exchanging contact information with at least one person, you're doing yourself a disservice. So use this opportunity opportunity right here, right now, to engage and interact with each other. And again, thank you all so much for being part of our audience.
Yes, and of course, you can listen to the podcast at all the major platforms, whether you have Spotify, Apple Music. You can follow us on Instagram at The Urban Collective Show, also on Facebook at The Urban Collective Show. We put out episodes every week. Every Wednesday, episodes are put up. This one actually is going to go up a little bit earlier since we did it this weekend. So this episode will be up on Tuesday and also on our YouTube channel at The Urban Collective Show. Follow us, share, comment, interact with us. That's what we're here for.
Yes, and let us know if you have any other people you'd like to have on our show. We're always taking suggestions and volunteers and all of that. Another element of our show that we always love to do is leave all of our listeners with a motivational quote. So in the spirit of entrepreneurship and in the spirit of celebrating amazing people of color who are doing great things, I'd like to leave you all with a quote by Madam C.J. Walker, who stated, "I had to make my own living and my own opportunity, but I made it. Don't sit down and wait for the opportunities to come. Get up and make them." So I'm going to say that to you all one more time for all of you entrepreneurs out in that world. Do not just sit on your dreams, go out there and make something happen. Madam C.J. Walker states, "I had to make my own living and my own opportunity, but I made it. Don't sit down and wait for the opportunities to come. Get up and make them." So to you all, I wish you all nothing but the best. It's your First Lady, Ms. Bernadine Truth.
This your man and I see.
And we're the Urban Collective Show. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.